So the media is claiming that Donald Trump called for the Constitution to be, I don't know what, terminated or something. Donald Trump, of course, is denying this. Donald Trump did say that when you have a fraudulent election, certain rules must be terminated, including some of those found in the Constitution, and then came back saying he wasn't saying get rid of the Constitution. He was making an interesting point. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know that he's right or wrong, because Abraham Lincoln, at a time of civil war, suspended elements of the Constitution as well. And those elements were brought back, I guess it's to a certain degree. But I'm not here to tell you about what 2020, what the election really meant, and whether or not Trump should or shouldn't, terminate elements of the Constitution to fix things or whatever. We'll talk about that. I'm just here to talk about the escalation of things. We have this tweet from Keith Olbermann. Now, I know. Y'all know Keith Olbermann lost the plot a long time ago, but he tweeted something rather funny. He said, again, this is from Bad Legal Takes on Twitter. He said, again, this isn't difficult. Trump just threatened to terminate the Constitution. Send a military detachment to Mar-a-Lago, seize him, detain him in a stockade or brig, and try him in a military court. This is an open attempt at a revolution to overthrow the government. It's not, but what's interesting to me about all this is the current state of the culture war. And while we may sit here on our big brains, you know that meme where the Wojak has the brain that's so large he's sitting on it? We say, ha, what a silly man calling for something so silly. 'Twill never happen. Yeah, if you had Keith Olbermann calls for the military rendition of Donald Trump on your 2022 bingo card, yeah, you probably did actually, because Keith Olbermann's nuts and he's been saying stuff like this for a long time. Okay, but if you went back in time 7 or 8 years and said, after Donald Trump fails to retake the presidency, he will call for certain elements of the Constitution to be terminated because it turns out that the FBI was colluding with Facebook and Twitter to interfere in the election. In response to this, Keith Olbermann calls for the military rendition of former President Donald Trump. You'd be saying, shut up. Not even The Simpsons went that far. The Simpsons simply said, quote, or I don't know the exact quote, but Lisa Simpson says, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump. And everybody laughed. Oh, a budget crunch from President Trump. Simpsons did not get it right. Everybody was like the Simpsons predicted the future. They got one thing right. Trump would be president. But they did not expect, the calls for a military rendition from the sportscaster guy from, what was he on, MSNBC and ESPN or something? It's really amazing that we've come this far. And the culture war is a very serious, escalating thing. So I want to say this, seeing this nonsensical tweet. A lot of people want to point out that it's just a bad legal take and that it's silly and that it's meaningless. A lot of people want to point out that what Trump is saying is probably meaningless, but neither are. We are the human experience. Logic does not matter. Law does not matter. I hear a lot of people say things like, that would be illegal. That's illegal. You can't do that. Oh, please. Yesterday, I mentioned at the end of the show, because I got the messages, but I didn't read them. We were swatted last night. Again, it's like number 16 or something. I don't know. Someone broke into my house, and I wasn't there. 2 people did, apparently, and shots were fired. It's illegal, they say. It'll never happen, they say. It's literally happening, and the law isn't doing anything about it. January 6th. The protesters in front of the Supreme Court justices' homes. It's all illegal. They're not doing anything about it. They're arresting pro-life activists. That's why, I said the other day, law enforcement doesn't exist anymore. And it's funny because people are like, swatted? Law enforcement doesn't exist? What a silly statement, Tim. And I'm like, do you know what swatting is? It's a call to investigate. And I don't want to give into too many details, but we have armed guards here, so nothing really impacts us anymore, but it's still happening. But the law is not being enforced. There was no law broken here. They showed up and said, they show up. That's what happens. But how are they stopping the people who are doing it? They're not. They're not. Because there's no law enforcement. They cannot stop it. Keith Olbermann wants Trump to be renditioned. It's not going to happen. There's no law enforcement. Well, actually, to be fair, with the weaponization of the DOJ, that's entirely possible. But of course, that would not be adequate law enforcement. I'm going to show you this tweet from James Woods, and we'll talk about what's going on. James Woods says, I've come to the decision that social media is a collection of echo chambers, and those of the biggest bullhorns are decimating conversations of merit. It's simply too exhausting to endure, honestly. I have a wonderful life. I'm going to go enjoy it. God bless you all. Well, maybe James Woods is dipping out of the culture war conversation. We just learned the DNC was targeting him specifically with censorship because of the Twitter files. Some say, well, actually what's probably happening is his lawyers were like, dude, you need to stop tweeting while we enter litigation. And that's true. One of the reasons that I don't talk a lot about what's going on is litigation. You can simply look up litigation about me and things that are going on if you want to better understand it, but I don't talk about it. Because when you want to win, you shut your mouth. And that may be the case for James Woods. But James is a bit wrong in this regards. A collection of echo chambers. Those are the biggest bullhorns are decimating the conversations of merit. You're not wrong in that regard, James Woods. You're not wrong if you're leaving because you have a legal case pending or about to begin and you shouldn't be talking. But leaving is the wrong thing to do for any other reason. Some people like to say that Twitter is an echo chamber and that the real world is so different. Some people, Scott Adams said this, and Scott's been right about a lot of stuff. He has. But he's not right about everything. And he said he knows there's no civil war because he went outside. That's it. It's a crazy idea, it's 1862. The heat of the Civil War is burning across the United States. A man in Atlanta, Georgia, walks out of his house and goes, "Ooh, I just want to beat up some random person." And then he walks up to his neighbor and says, "Ooh, I'm going to beat you up because we're in a civil war." Why would that happen? A man in Atlanta walks out of his house and goes, "There's no civil war. My neighbors are working and everything's normal, just like this." Bro, the Civil War was not people in their own cities punching each other in the face. So when people are like, "I walked outside and didn't see a civil war," I'll tell you what's really going on. James Woods, yes, you're not wrong at echo chambers. And a lot of people have tried to say to me, it's Twitter, it's not real life, blah, blah, blah. No, but it influences real life. The weaponization of the DOJ, pro-life activists being arrested. What was it, 13? The protesters in front of the Supreme Court justices' homes, not arrested, despite the fact that a man literally tried to kill one of them. Yeah. It's an information war. It's a war of cultural influence. We're seeing something interesting happen with Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter. Elon Musk buying Twitter was basically dropping a nuke in the culture war. All of a sudden now, he's shifting the narrative. Antifa's getting banned. Businesses are starting to no longer cower in fear. Now the concern is if you piss off Elon Musk, he will send the hate mob after you instead. That's the importance and the power of Twitter. It is an information war. It is a culture war. That's why the media lies about everything. It's rallying the troops and gaining influence. There was a story I saw over at patriots.win. Actually, no, I'm sorry. This wasn't at Patriots. Maybe it was. Some people were trying to eat at a restaurant in Virginia, in Richmond, and I forgot the name of the restaurant. But they were told that because their organization was pro-life, they would not be served and they were not welcome there. They tried getting a reservation or something. And they were shocked and they were outraged. And they said, in Colorado, when someone goes to a baker, the left screams and files lawsuits. When the right simply tries to eat food with no special considerations, they're kicked out. That is the culture war. Deprive your ideological enemies of access. Do not give them food. Do not give them resources. And this is what's happening. And conservatives don't play that game. James Woods, with all due respect, says, you know what? I have a wonderful life. I'm going to go enjoy it. Man, part of me is jealous. You know what I was thinking about? I remember I was driving through, I think it was Arizona. Maybe it was Colorado. I can't remember. No, it's got to be Arizona. And I went to this little tourist trap UFO stand thing. Just driving across the country. Man, pulling over at a rest stop. Beautiful spring air, mountain air. Grab some garbage from the vending machine and just enjoy life. go to a little spot in the middle of nowhere where they're talking about UFOs and say, maybe it was New Mexico. I don't know. New Mexico seems to have, maybe. I was driving through. I don't remember. And I'm like, here I am, bunkered down in this studio, armed guards, swattings, death threats, and all that stuff. Boy, would it not be easier just to say, you know what? I don't need any of this stuff, and I never did. James Woods is saying something to that effect. You know what? Conversations of merit are being decimated. I have a wonderful life. I'm going to go enjoy it. God bless you all. James has no obligation to anybody in a certain sense. But James has the biggest obligation to everyone in the greater sense. And that's one of the reasons why I can't stop doing this. We're fighting an information war. We're fighting for our values desperately. We have, to a certain degree, threats of extreme violence. Like we hear, someone broke into my house. There's a 9mm bullet lodged in my kitchen in the island. It's a very, very strange story. After the swatting, I believe it was probably overtly political, a targeted incident, but we don't know for sure. Could have just been random, but for reasons I can't get into, I think it's less likely to have been random. We just don't know. There's reasons why it would be insane for a person to do what they did as a random, if it was like some tweakers trying to score, they would not do what they did for a variety of reasons. So that's all I can really say without giving away too much details and compromising my security. But I'm sad to see James Woods go. I'm sad to see it. Because you have people like Keith Olbermann on the other side calling for a military rendition of Trump. We need our high-profile individuals to espouse their values, to reach the people and be influential. And James is saying, yo, I'm out. Man, I got to tell you, I'll say it again. Would be wonderful to just take my van, comfortable living inside with a little TV, watch movies, park in the mountains of Colorado, and just with snow all around, wake up in the morning, go snowboarding or whatever, go to a skate park, sit by the fire with a hot cup of cocoa and say, you know what, the world's burning down. Why should I stress about it? Why should I? So I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I can only say that things seem to be very serious. Very serious. Here we go. Trump digs deeper hole with Constitution comments. They say here, what do they say? Trump, who last week drew condemnation from several high-profile conservatives for dining with a white nationalist, found himself in hot water again over the weekend when he claimed fresh talk of Twitter's handling of a controversial story about Hunter Biden meant parts of the Constitution should be disregarded so he could return to the White House. Let's talk about that. Over on Twitter, Trump said, the fake news is actually trying to convince the American people that I said I wanted to terminate the Constitution. This is simply more disinformation. Simply put, if an election is irrefutably fraudulent, it should go to the rightful winner or at minimum be redone. Where open and blatant fraud is involved, there should be no time limit for change. Bro, it's been 2 years. 2 years. Man, it's been 2 years. Donald Trump had an option to focus on winning in 2024. He's instead decided to focus on just complaining about 2020. That will be his legacy. All right. It ain't convincing me. But let me show you what we got going on here over on Predicted. Donald Trump. Predicted says, who will win the 2024 U.S. presidential election? Trump fell to third place. That's amazing. Ron DeSantis has about 30% more than Trump. And Joe Biden, slightly above Ron DeSantis. You got to be kidding me. Joe Biden predicted is favoring Joe Biden to win in 2024. This is why I'm saying, man, James Woods, you can't dip out, man. You are a powerful, influential voice, a high-profile celebrity. But I can't blame you. He's an older guy. I am a younger man. So maybe it's easier for me to say that I will stay in the fray. And it's easier for James Woods to say, look, I can't do it. Plus, he's got a lawsuit. Okay, so maybe that's the important reason. But Joe Biden, look how old he is. Donald Trump, look how old he is. Kirstie Alley, rest in peace, 71. Also sticking around. We need these voices. We need influential people to stick around and push back and say no. Donald Trump is doing what Donald Trump does, but Donald Trump is not the most effective communicator in that regard. All right, at least I should say that the media is certainly lying. But I want to show you what Donald Trump is saying versus what Abraham Lincoln did. One of the most controversial things Lincoln did while he was president involved the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus, a constitutional guarantee of one's right to take legal action against unlawful detention. This is from nps.gov. On April 27, 1861, in an attempt to quell the Southern Rebellion, Lincoln suspended habeas corpus for disloyal persons who could not be adequately restrained by the ordinary processes of law. Though the Constitution states the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus may be suspended in cases of rebellion or invasion, many believe that President Lincoln had gone too far without congressional approval. And then they're going to say, but he really did love the Constitution. Yeah. Desperate times call for desperate measures, as they say. So here we sit on the precipice. Elon Musk uncovering absolute malfeasance. Government actors. Let me show you this Michael Tracy tweet. Yoel Roth said he had weekly meetings with FBI, DHS, etc. throughout 2020 and was warned to look out for hacked material involving Hunter Biden. Even if no state actor directly intervened in the censorship, it's a red herring. He was already primed to do their bidding. I mean, sure, but Michael, I would just say this is them directly intervening. This is the FBI going and pushing their thumb on the scale, knowing what will happen. That's how you do it. They're not going to go and be like, hey, by the way, if a story comes out, delete it. They're going to be like, by the way. And it happens. And of course, the creepo establishment media is desperately trying to run cover-up. The Readout blog. Elon Musk's first Twitter manipulation effort was a big flop. James Woods bowing out at a time when we have to deal with this. I will stress it again. James may need to bail out for legal reasons, but he probably should have just tweeted, I'm going to be entering litigation, so I will be going radio silent for those reasons. Instead, what he really did was a bit demoralizing. I'm not trying to rag on the guy. I'm a fan. Not just of it was Hades and Hercules. Never forget. But I was watching another movie, a movie from like the 80s or 90s with James Woods in it. I can't remember what it was. But to see this sends a bad message. Look, I got a good life. I don't need to do this. Man, I wish I could say the same. I got a good life. Got a nice car, got a skate park. I could just turn it all off and I'd be set for life. You get to a certain point, you don't need to risk everything. Look, I know a lot of people, there's no way to say things without people attacking you or praising you, right? So let me just put it this way. We're tremendously successful here at Timcast because of the content that we've produced, the shows we've had, the guests we've had, but it's all related to what you as viewers and members are willing to support. With the mass support of so many people, it allows us to live and operate comfortably. But with the politics comes the discomfort, the swatting, the threats, the attacks. There is the absolute reality of being able to just say, you know what? I've done enough. But I can't do that. I'm fearful what the future of this country may bring. Someone's got to call out the lies. MSNBC writes this story. I will show you Michael Tracy posting an FEC.gov document proving government involvement in this. Meanwhile, MSNBC, which is not NewsGuard certified, lies to you. We need as many people as possible highlighting that, calling it out, and standing up. And with all of the good that comes from your support comes the negative from the detractors who want us dead. I am not someone who needs to have cast castle and cars and any of that. Never have been. And it's remarkable to be how many people tell me I'm wrong. No, seriously. Behind the scenes conversations often drift into stuff like this. And recently I'm talking to someone and said, you look, man, with the stuff we've been getting, it's tough because I don't need any of this. Like, I don't need the material possessions. I do this because I believe in it. I do this because it's an important battle. I do it because I want people to live well. I believe in freedom. A Star Trek-like future. Captain Picard, man. Oh, don't you rag on Star Trek. I will stress this point. The episode where, and you really should watch it, Data the android creates an offspring. The government, an admiral, says you will hand over your child to the Federation because of the scientific importance. And then Picard, the captain, is ordered to make this happen. And he says no. To order a man to hand over his child to the state. Not on my watch. And it's just like, that's the message, man. That's the stuff I grew up watching, watched it again over and over again. this idea of the rights of the individual. That's a future that I really, really hope to see. Not to mention, man, really want to travel the stars, all that good stuff. Elon Musk, big fan. Colonize Mars, right? The only way that happens is if men of good conscience refuse to back down. So, sorry for making this about me as much. Just seeing Keith Olbermann call for Trump's rendition, seeing James Woods bow out, man, it hits you, doesn't it? Like, we got these lunatics on the left, and they're rabid. They won't stop. But time and time again, we see people on the right say, you know what, I don't need this. Regular people saying, I don't want to be involved. And that's why the fervent, rabid left wins. I don't need a fancy car. I don't need a big house. I simply need a van down by the river. It's an SNL joke. I'm referencing Chris Farley. But in reality, the idea of having a van, I got a van. It's got a shower in it. Built it years ago. Mentioned on Rogan podcast. It's got a shower in it. It's got a TV in it. It's got an internet module thing up top. It's got speakers. And you could just park it wherever you want, sleep safely, hop out in the morning, skate, have some nice food, not have to stress about anything, live in anonymity, and just be comfortable. But I believe in more. Seeing all of this stuff, it makes me fearful that humanity will waste its precious gifts, that the true potential of man will not be risen to. What I fear is a human legacy of failure, ideological manipulation, and people like Bill Gates and his psychotic ideas. And what I hope for is a future where, you know what, man, Star Trek really was a great influence and inspiration to me as a kid. In Star Trek, they explain that there was a period where there was authoritarianism, police were heavily drugged to keep them in line. Civilization basically collapsed after a major war. And then as they were picking up the pieces after a new dark age, Zephyr Cochrane, was that his name? Invented warp, the ability to travel faster than light, which triggered the Vulcans, aliens, to take notice of humans and say, we better intervene. It's awesome storytelling. And so outside of all of that fanciful stuff, I look at the struggles humanity faces, and I do think maybe it will take a dark period before we rise to that occasion. But in the future of Star Trek, they recognize those failures. They look back and say, can you believe what we went through to get where we are? The only way we get to a point where we are spacefaring, space colonizers of tremendous influence on the universe, if possible, is by standing up for values of classical liberalism, individuality, responsibility, personal responsibility. I also take a look at things like Starship Troopers. Service guarantees citizenship. The idea that there is a civic duty. We only get there if we refuse to back down, and that people, when I say men, I don't mean males, I mean humanity. When people of good values and merit refuse to back down. But it is an uphill battle. It is two dragons in the sky fighting in a struggle. It is yin yang. It is the dark wolf and the light wolf constantly fighting. And there's that saying, there are two wolves within you, the evil and the good. Which one, and they're fighting, which one wins? The one you feed. If those of us of good conscience back down, and I'm talking about the public sphere, I'm talking about just tweeting, I'm talking about influencing people, then it is the darkness that triumphs. Maybe we are destined to be locked into an eternal struggle. Maybe. In which case I see many people just saying, what's the point? Fair point. I get it. But I'm hopeful that there are going to be major gains and a vision of a future where humanity becomes space colonizers and brings the wonderful classical liberal values of individuality and curiosity to many far-off planets. There are a lot of challenges involved in that, right? We can find another planet teeming with life. It's probably going to have viruses and other crazy things that'll kill you if you go out into it. So how do we deal with stuff like that? Science and technology. But not if we have a bunch of crackpot zealots who want to burn the whole system down. All right. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.